Hello, 5th and 6th grade. This is your history class for Friday, October 9th. And so we are going to be talking about the Egyptian civilization. And go ahead and look in your work text, as you'll be doing pages 36 and 37. And their study guides. There are only 6 questions on page number 36. However, I do want it to be in complete sentences. All right, complete sentences. And then you have the study guide, and just follow the color of the map thing, and you have a map on page number 50, which you could look at, but also on page number 52. And so we're going to be reading 51 to 54, and that should help you with that. But as far as the study guide goes, it's Egyptians' natural barriers were, and a lot of these questions you may be able to get from the previous side on page 35. And how did the Nile affect the development of civilization in Egypt? And how did the flooding of the Nile affect the taxes people paid? And compare and contrast. And so that means you're going to say what's the same, compare, and contrast. You're going to say what's different about how taxes were determined in Egypt with the modern tax system, with the modern tax system they have, and they give that information to you in there. How did the flooding of the Nile affect the development of the calendar? And then the last thing is write an essay. Now, an essay, what you're going to do is you're going to get information about that particular topic, in this case, about Joseph, God using Joseph to preserve his people and surrounding civilization. Now, that should be pretty simple to do, but that paragraph, if you don't do it as a paragraph, you will just end up having to redo it anyway. It will not be something that you will be able to turn in without having done, or without having done correctly. So you need to make sure you have a topic sentence and supporting sentences. Now, I'm going to help you by giving you a topic sentence, basically. And so this is the topic sentence that you should use for that. When it says to describe how God used Joseph to preserve his people and surrounding civilizations, and you would say, God used Joseph to preserve his people and surrounding civilizations in a few ways, all right? And then you're going to list them after that, just 3 sentences, 4 sentences, whatever it takes to get the information out there. Not just one, though, at least 2 sentences to describe the way that God used Joseph to preserve his people and the surrounding civilizations, okay? And so that is what you're going to be doing for your work text. Now, let's go ahead with the reading, starting on page number 51. The flooding of the Nile. Each summer in ancient Egypt, the Nile overflowed its banks. Melting snows in African mountains and heavy spring rains in the south caused the river to rise significantly. The water would rush down the mountains and across the flat land of Egypt in a flood covering everything in its path. The flood typically lasted for 4 months. During those months, the water soaked into the land. Silt would settle from the water. This silt became the life-sustaining feature of the flood. Without the annual fertilizing quality of the silt, the crops would not have thrived. Now, the silt is the dirt and all the things that were brought down that had nutrients in it to be able to cause the sand, basically it was added to the sand, on top of the sand, to be able to grow things. Farming along the Nile. When the land was nearly dry from the flood, Egyptian farmers went to work in their fields. Because the soil was still soft, plowing was not necessary. The farmers simply scattered their seeds on the damp ground. Then they walked their farm animals back and forth across the field. The animals' hooves pushed the seeds into the soil. Once the planting was done, the farmers had to keep the crops watered. The Egyptians dug irrigation canals for crops planted farther away from the river. Many farmers used a shaduf to dip water from the Nile River into an irrigation canal. It was hard, daily work to keep the crops watered until harvest. Some farmers used a water wheel that lifted water from the Nile to the irrigation canals. A donkey or an ox could be used to help turn the wheel, but few farmers could afford luxuries such as a water wheel. Most fathers relied on help from their sons. The strip of fertile land along the Nile River is only about 10 miles wide. However, it stretches the whole length of the river. As the river empties into the Mediterranean Sea, the Nile widens into a fan shape called a delta. A delta gets its name because it resembles the Greek letter delta, which is like a triangle. Early settlers found, and we're on page number 53 now, early settlers found the Nile delta an ideal location to grow crops. They did not have to worry about having a water source because their land was low and well watered by the Nile. The people of Egypt planted a variety of crops. They grew wheat and barley, melons and cucumbers, onions and garlic, and dates and figs. The river supplied many kinds of fish and waterfowl. People also raised animals, but usually only the wealthy ate meat that was raised for food. Let's go back really quickly. We'll get to this. Go back to the previous page, which is page 52, where the map is, and it says Egypt, and it says the Arab Republic of Egypt is located in northeastern Africa. Modern Egypt is bordered by Libya to the west, Sudan to the south, the Red Sea to the east, and the Mediterranean Sea to the north. Climate: Egypt has hot, dry summers and moderate winters. Temperatures range from 107 degrees in the summer to 55 degrees in the winter. Topography: the land is dominated by the Nile River and its valley. Desert lies to the east and west of the Nile. The Sinai Peninsula is in eastern Egypt. Egypt's natural resources: Egypt's greatest natural resource is water from the Nile River. Other natural resources include iron ore, petroleum, natural gas, phosphate, limestone, manganese, talc, which you get talcum powder from, zinc, asbestos, gypsum, and lead. All right, now back to page 53, that second paragraph on the left there. Egypt became the storehouse of the ancient world. The Nile provided Egypt with fertile land where an abundance of crops grew. Large harvests allowed Egyptians to store food for times of famine when the Nile River did not rise. Because of their careful planning, the Egyptians usually had more than enough to eat and were able to sell the extra to other regions. Other civilizations learned of Egypt's bounty. Many people traveled to Egypt when they were in need of food. During a period known as the Middle Kingdom, a famine lasted 7 years that affected both Egypt and surrounding lands. The book of Genesis records that God had sent Pharaoh a warning of this famine in a vision. This dream was interpreted by Joseph, a Hebrew from Canaan who had been sold into slavery. Joseph told Pharaoh that the dream predicted 7 years of abundant food followed by 7 years of famine. He advised Pharaoh to store food during the plenteous years so that people would have food during the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh appointed Joseph to oversee this program. Because the Egyptians stored food for the famine, people from neighboring regions such as Canaan came to purchase food from Egypt during the famine. The Egyptians themselves also had to purchase food from the Pharaoh, and this led to a change in how taxation worked in Egypt, at least for a while. When the Egyptians ran out of money to buy food, they sold themselves and their land to Pharaoh. Then they owed a fifth of their harvest to Pharaoh for every year that they had a harvest. You see there the pictographs there, the hieroglyphics that they used to kind of indicate what life was like. It says colorfully dressed people in the middle band of this Egyptian wall painting may be the Israelites being presented by Joseph to the Pharaoh. And so it's kind of an interesting thing there, what you see. Remember, they were ranchers, and so that was something the Egyptians didn't like. That's why they ended up at the Delta Nile. And so you see even children that are with the animals and the brothers that would be with there, and that's very possible it could be them. So one more page 54, and it says, on the top right, it says, Nilometers on Elephantine Island near the first cataract. How might the nilometer have worked? And so you see it has different levels to be able to show what the level of water is. And then below it says, how might the Egyptians have calculated time with this water clock? And so these are two things we'll be looking for here. It says taxes and time. The people of Egypt depended on the Nile River not only for survival, but also as a means to pay their taxes. Governmental officials kept detailed records of when the river flooded and how high the water rose. The Egyptians used a nilometer to measure the Nile's water levels. The measurements affected how much the people owed in taxes because the more the Nile River flooded, the more fertile farmland there was to produce crops. The amount of taxes was determined by crop production. Taxation in ancient Egypt was a part of life. Many things such as land, livestock, and crops were taxed each year. Priests were not required to pay taxes. The earliest Egyptians did not have money. Therefore, tax payments were made with a percentage of livestock or crops, but could also be paid by service in the military or work on the pharaoh's tomb. Every family was required to pay a labor tax. A family member was chosen to serve in the military or to work on road construction or building projects. Because of the importance of the Nile's floods, the Egyptians developed a calendar that told the exact days on which the Nile was expected to flood. This calendar had 3 seasons: the flood, which is Akhit, planting, Perit, and harvest, Shemu. The Egyptian calendar was based on the phases of the moon. There were 4 months in each season. Each month had 3 weeks with 10 days each. Since this calendar was 5 days short of a full year, the Egyptians added 5 more days to the calendar. They used these days to celebrate the birthdays of the gods. The Egyptians used 2 types of clocks, the water clock and the sundial. Both kept time, but each had a disadvantage. The water clock had to be refilled often, and the sundial could be used only during the day. Ancient Egyptians used the stars to determine the time at night. All right, and so you see the comparison of seasons and calendars there on that chart on the left. Your secret word is going to be, where was that? A sundial, and that is your secret word. Don't forget to write that down for Monday. There is no science video. We did that experiment today, and so you won't need to do that. Have a good day, and have a good weekend. See you Monday. Bye.